Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome our new mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. Many of us have known Karen for a long time. I had the pleasure of serving in Congress with Ms. Bass. Our offices were right next to each other in the Cannon office building, and Karen and I were both in the freshman class that year, and there was about 9 of us in that class, and so we were kind of a very close group of members of Congress, so it's great to have you back in Los Angeles. Last week, I joined Mayor Bass at the city's Emergency Operations Center as she signed a state of emergency declaration on homelessness for the city of Los Angeles. She spoke about her commitment to finally treating the homelessness crisis like we would any other crisis that displaces tens of thousands of people from their homes, like we would see if there was an earthquake or a hurricane or a fire. All of us know that in those events, we would be moving heaven and earth with all hands on deck to make sure that people got the resources and the roof over their heads that they need. Over the weekend, she unveiled her Inside Safe proposal, a plan that doubles down on strategies that we know work: hotel and motel conversions and master leasing. This is an approach that we've done here in the county, and my office has been doing successfully since 2019. And we saw by far the most successful housing strategy were the Project Room Key and the Project Home Key during the pandemic. I think I share a feeling that many people in LA are experiencing right now, Madam Mayor, and that's a new sense of hope. I know my colleague, Supervisor Barger, always uses that word when she sees you or hears you. And not because any of these policies are a silver bullet that can magically solve homelessness, but because Mayor Bass's mindset and determination are bringing a renewed vigor to a battle that we've all been fighting way too long. And we know this is not the City of LA's problem to solve alone. And that is why I particularly appreciate you, Mayor Bass, saying we need to link arms rather than point fingers. I think it's important that the county be the city's partner in this new effort. And that leads us to the motion that I have before us today, along with my co-author, Supervisor Barger, to support Los Angeles City's emergency declaration and your new efforts to address this homelessness crisis. Our motion would do 2 things. 1, we would send representatives from the Department of Health Services, Public Social Services, Public Health, and Mental Health to join you, Mayor Bass, and your city leadership as you work to implement the state of emergency and the Inside Safe program. We want to be at the table, we need to be at the table, and we know what is needed and how we can help. And 2, it would make sure county staff can partner with the city's outreach teams to make sure that anyone you're helping in encampments or who you are moving into motels or hotels can get access to mental health care, drug addiction services, Medi-Cal, general relief, or any other service that we in the county can provide. Oh, I guess it's another thing. Lastly, we're going to have our Director of Homeless Initiative, Sherry Todoroff, to make sure that the directives that I just mentioned are implemented and report back to this board in 60 days and 180 days on their progress and any needs that they might have to support you. Since your announcement last week, Mayor, I know my colleagues and I have heard from other cities who are a little bit concerned that this might mean taking away resources from them. But I'm going to push back a little bit on that idea because I want to make it clear the majority of people experiencing homelessness are in the city of Los Angeles. Out of the nearly 70,000 people that are homeless at LA County, 42,000 are living in the city of Los Angeles. That's then less than 30,000 in the rest of the 87 cities. And I know Supervisor Solis now feels this even more because she has all of Skid Row in her supervisorial district. And we know that is ground zero for this problem. But I know, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I've told every one of my cities, if they step up to the plate, and if they build a shelter, or they want to build affordable housing, or they want to convert a motel for some encampments, I am there to help them with county services. So we're doing that. Your emergency declaration just means we are really going to put all hands on deck to help the city of Los Angeles. Thank you to Supervisor Barger for recommending that we include language in this motion stating that if any of those other cities in the county declare a state of emergency, we will be with you side by side to support your efforts. In fact, I hope this is just the beginning. I hope when we see the progress in the city of LA, we will see more cities in all of our areas, colleagues, step up and agree to do more to solve this problem. I know that Mayor Bass wants to embed someone from the county into the city's incident command, and I think this is a great idea. And then I would like to read in the following for this motion saying, appoint the CEO or a designee to be the second deputy incident commander in the city of Los Angeles Incident Command and at the city's emergency operations centers. I think that puts us squarely in your corner together so that we can really begin making a difference. Colleagues, I hope you support this motion. I don't know where you stand on it. I thought if it was okay with you, we would let the mayor now present her state of emergency case to us. And then each of you, after she speaks, I would love for you to talk to her, ask questions, and we'll start with Supervisor Barger, who was the co-author.
Well, I'd be happy to yield to the mayor, and then I will speak after that.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Great.
Wonderful.
Mayor Bass, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be here. I'm very excited about this because I think it sends a very important signal, just like the signal from last morning when you were there, when we signed the order putting Los Angeles in a state of emergency. I think it's a new day in our city, and I'm just so excited because each one of you have done significant work in your district regarding the unhoused. And to have a partnership where we have locked arms between the city and the county, I think it sends a great message, not just here, but in other cities as well. And you might have noticed that President Biden issued a declaration around homelessness as well. We want to make sure that we have a total alignment of every part of the government and, of course, the private sector in order to address this problem. So, Madam President, thank you for your motion and thank you for joining me last week as I issued the Declaration on Homelessness. Supervisor Solis, I want to thank you for standing with me as I signed the executive directive that would dramatically accelerate and lower the cost of building affordable housing and temporary housing. And I'm sure you have all talked to developers and community-based organizations. As a matter of fact, where we held the press conference was a piece of property where a community organization had been trying to stand up 49 units of affordable housing for 16 years it took them. And so the executive directive basically says, in a time certain, the developer will know exactly when plans will be approved and the process will be moved on. So I want to thank every member of the board for engaging with me in such a welcoming and productive way as I hit the ground running to address this crisis. We all know that every night in the city of Los Angeles, 40,000 people go to sleep unhoused, and more than 60,000 in the county. And every day, 5 people do not wake up. We all know this is a humanitarian crisis. We all know this is a life and death crisis, and it is a crisis that pays no heed to jurisdictional lines. So it is a crisis that requires all levels of government to come together. So it is with great hope that I urge the board to approve President Han's motion to lock arms with the city of Los Angeles and our new emergency approach to homelessness to ensure our efforts to bring people inside are matched with your experts and resources in healthcare, mental health, substance abuse, public health, and other social services, because we all know getting people housed is the #1 priority, but on day one, you get them housed, and on day one, they have services. That's the only way for it to be successful. It is the only effective approach to this crisis, is one that is unified and comprehensive, and is only possible with a deep partnership between the city and the county that would represent a new direction and a new hope for Los Angeles and the unincorporated communities and the 87 other cities in the county. In signing my emergency declaration on homelessness, I also activated the city's Emergency Operations Center to break City Hall away from its traditional approach that is focused on process and to replace it with a new approach focused on solutions, results, and speed. Embedding county staff in the Emergency Operations Center and alongside city departments will dramatically accelerate and enhance our work to save lives at a true inflection point in Los Angeles. When we launch Inside Safe, it'll be an opportunity to basically take lessons learned from the pandemic. Novel approach. We do have hotels and motels that learned from that experience and now are willing to do master leasing. As a matter of fact, we have calls from a number of people who want to offer either apartment buildings, hotels, or motels, and we need to take advantage of that. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I so look forward to working with you, because the only way we can really solve this is if we are working in complete partnership. And I will tell you, since I declared the state of emergency, a number of other cities, some in California and some in other states, are calling and looking at what we're doing. And so I think we have an opportunity to show a new way to go about this. And I want to just take a minute and acknowledge our Chief of Housing and Homelessness Solutions, Mercedes Marquez. Some of you might know her from her work, longtime work with the city, the county, and also as one of the assistant secretaries in HUD. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bass. Okay, I'll start with my co-author, Supervisor Barger, and then I see Supervisor Solis, you're on the queue, and then I'm sure my colleagues over here will want to say something. Okay.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for your leadership in bringing this forward. Nothing made me happier than watching that press conference last week, and the people that you had around you, and to have you as part of that. It is about, we're all in this together. None of us are going to solve it alone. And I really thank you, Mayor Bass, for using your voice to bring together all 88 cities. And as you said when you were sworn in, it is about working together. Homelessness doesn't know boundaries. It's happening throughout our county. And clearly, LA City has the lion's share of the homeless, but it's not a one-size-fits-all either within the city of LA. So I think it's important for us to recognize and share the fact this is a humanitarian crisis that truly is in need of an emergency order. And it's something that I know Supervisor Solis and I brought in a motion for the Blue Ribbon Commission on Homelessness, because we recognize that while we were using Measure H dollars, we needed to rethink and look at what are we doing well and where do we need to pivot. And the commission that we put together was charged with a number of items, but the key part of the mission was to embrace inclusivity and help the county do better when it comes to working alongside municipal partners to fight against homelessness. Working alongside municipal partners, again, something that you have pledged. We were able to hear from all 88 cities in the region, and there was no doubt that many view homelessness the same way we do, as an absolute emergency, which requires an emergency-like response. And I tell people, we're not going to solve it in 1 year, but we are going to work together to get the most vulnerable off the street. So that, is why Cherie Tartaroff and her team at the CEO Homeless Initiative have charged with continuing that collaboration, supporting our city's daily efforts. And I want to thank you publicly for the work that you're doing. Fezia and Cherie, I want to thank you, but I also want you to know that this board is going to work collaboratively with you to make sure that we are transparent, but we also are all hands on deck with all of our departments, because homelessness touches every department in the county, from our parks to children and family services, many of which, these children do not need to be in our system if not for being unhoused. So we're gonna have to work together. And I also want to acknowledge Matt Szabo and his team at the City of Los Angeles, who have been implementing the 7th Birch recommendation, which establishes an executive level action. So I'd like to thank him and the city for their collaboration on that front, taking the Birch report and actually looking at that. I know that the Homeless Initiative team has met with our cities on Measure H, taken feedback on the county response to homelessness services, and has been providing some guidance and assistance on key housing opportunities like Project Home Key. And speaking of housing opportunities, Mayor Bass, I want to touch upon one of the things you mentioned in your inaugural speech about streamlining the city's review of new housing projects. The region is facing a critical housing shortage, and both the county and the city need to take significant action to help remove unnecessary hurdles to building new housing. So while the city stepped up, we, the county, have to as well. It's not only the cause of the surge in homelessness that we are seeing countywide, but the regional housing shortage is still a significant factor in this discussion and one area where we have the ability to make quick turnaround. Again, bravo to you. I will lead an initiative to streamline the county's permitting and entitlement process for all development, especially for housing. This initiative, led by the county, to bring in a consultant to perform an in-depth analysis into the areas where the county's current systems are failing to meet the mark. I was just briefed on the findings in the draft report and anticipate the final draft will be ready in early January. This is something the board had asked for, and so we're waiting for that report to come. And at that time, I plan to bring in a motion to implement critical recommendations. We have an obligation as well to do what's right. These recommendations will focus on increasing transparency, defining and tracking performance metrics, improving usability of our technological systems, and expand the concept of express permits to services to minimize delays. Process and bureaucracy can no longer stand in the way of necessity. We have to meet the urgency of this moment, and I share your resolve in tackling the issues on all fronts. Thank you for the time to address this, Madam Chair. I just want you to know, I keep saying hope, and I do have hope, because we're all speaking the same language, talking about what we need to do, no longer pointing the finger saying it's your problem. This is our problem. So thank you, Mayor Bass, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my entire board, because we really are committed as a board to do what's right. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for recognizing me, and along with Supervisor Barger, for presenting this motion. It couldn't be more timely, and I want to again congratulate you publicly, Mayor Karen Bass, and also for the appointment of your new deputy who's going to be in charge of housing for the homeless. Some of us know you from many, many years, and we're delighted. But we've known Karen Bass, our friend, for many years as well. And I had the opportunity to serve with you when you were in the House and I was a cabinet secretary. And under that time that I saw you demonstrating your leadership in many, many capacities with our speaker at that time, Nancy Pelosi, but also with the top leaders, and how you did it with grace and talent. And we say in Spanish, ganas. The quiet movement, but the urge that just keeps moving you, right? I want to thank you for all that you've done. You have undoubtedly set a different pace for the city and the county. You are one of the most popular elected officials right now. And that, I think, is tantamount to saying now's the time to push, to get those things done. And if everyone believes that you have the ability and talent, and as I do, I think other people do, then this is a time for all of us to kind of lockstep and continue to work with you. And I want to especially thank you for, even before you decided to run for mayor, you came out to visit our village, our care village out on Vignes Street that was supposed to be a staging area for our not our hospital, our jail, Men's Central Jail. You came, you were a congresswoman, and it wasn't even your district, but you came to see what we were unveiling. And I have to give a shout out to our county departments, Public Works, all of our partners. But we were able to put together a project in 6 months, record time, and cut the costs. We weren't talking about paying $550,000 per unit. We were able to bring that down to half of that, almost half. But I want to say that those are the kinds of things that I know you take seriously, and I know through your own commissioners that you've appointed, your task force, that they're bringing those ideas to you, one of which I know Sarah DeSalt brought to you. And I thank her because she was there to help us, to help me in designing and helping to bring that project to fruition. But I have, as you know, an urgency now because I cover all of Skid Row. And we spent a lot of time there, and we're going to continue to spend time with you to work with our Department of Mental Health, DHS, and our other stakeholders. Many want to do street medicine and get it done now. And I think we can work together with the state to try to draw down more money so that some of these providers can actually get paid for doing the street work that they've been doing anyway, but at a higher rate. And I think that those are some tools that we can talk about and try to get our legislative friends in Sacramento as well as the federal government to help us with those reimbursements. I know that the voters in Los Angeles also overwhelmingly passed your new initiative, which is going to help, I think, many of the unhoused. United to House LA initiative, which is going to be billions of dollars. But I know with that comes challenges and restrictions in terms of how that can be used. So one of the questions that I would want to ask you is, how can we as a county work with you? Because I know some of that money will go towards actual development and service. So if we're in the business of doing service, how can the county then interject itself so that we can work with you and hopefully receive, this assistance as well to keep it going? Just your brief thoughts on that, Madam Mayor.
Sure. I think we are both examining ULA and to see how the money can be used. And you're absolutely correct in saying it's quite prescriptive, but there also might be some flexibility in there as well. And so we're looking at that. I would suggest that we get our teams together and examine, because it absolutely has to be connected like everything else.
And Madam Chair, I know that, just a few more questions. We are looking at expanding the village that you saw in Vignes, and there are properties there that are owned by Metro, as well as discussions that we're having with our own CEO, Property Management, to see how we can acquire more property, but it's in the city's jurisdiction. So I'm wondering if that might be something we can continue to discuss and see how rapidly we can get these units up, but to become permanent.
Well, and I think what you have done with the village is a perfect example that it can be done. You don't have to wait 16 years.
Absolutely.
You can get it done. And I think at this point, I don't even know how many people I've taken there. I took our majority whip, Jim Clyburn, Secretary Marcia Fudge, Cedric Richmond when he was representing the White House, because I think it's a model to show, and especially the speed in which it was done.
And I look forward to working with you and our president, Joe Biden, who I know just released his own initiative. So hopefully we can collaborate with our teams back there and get the funding that LA County and the city deserve. And just one last thing, I know that you've heard about General Hospital.
Yes.
The flagship, where you worked.
That's
for many
right.
years.
In the emergency room.
And know how important that structure has been to so many lives, especially our impoverished and indigent people. But now we're looking at a hope to reimagine it as a place where we could provide up to 500 to 600 or maybe more units of housing. An RFP is going out next year, and we're hoping that we can collaborate again with the city, because it is in the city's jurisdiction, to see how we can offset some of those costs. We've already drawn down about $150 million. We're looking for the governor's involvement. I'm hoping that we can try to convince also the federal government, but also through the unique funding sources that you have to collaborate in any way we can. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it would be a great, especially since President Biden came forward with his initiative, that we go as the city and the county to the administration and say, and present to them ways that they could work with us. Because if he wants to reduce homelessness by 25%, making a huge dent in LA will help him get there since we're the epicenter for the country. And one of the things that I expressed to them is that we can always use money, of course, but we also need regulatory relief. Because, for example, your mental health village where you had to build 3 separate buildings because of 4 separate buildings, because of a 50-year-old regulation that was meant to deinstitutionalize, but in today's environment makes no sense. And so raising that, I talked to Secretary Becerra about it as well, and said, and we need to bring these people here so that they can see you're not gonna meet the president's goals if you don't address the social services, the health, the drug treatment, mental health. If you don't address it comprehensively, then he won't succeed. We want him to succeed by us succeeding.
Thank you again, and what an honor and pleasure to have both of you here, and look forward to working with you every single day. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Horvath, I think you're on the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for being here with us today. We appreciate your partnership right up from the start. I know you and I had the pleasure of being out over these past many months talking with folks, and as we were doing that together, you spoke very clearly about working hand in glove with the county, and here you are living up to your word, and I'm really grateful for that, and I know the people of Los Angeles are as well. I'm glad to see that we're going to be moving forward on a variety of different issues, because the truth is we have to work together to solve our homelessness crisis, city and county. I know that you're doing all that you can in this moment to step up and meet it, and that is very clear with the action that you have taken to help our unhoused people on the streets and also accelerate how quickly housing options are going to be developed. I had a couple of questions and then comments about sort of what our next steps could look like, but in your exploration of the emergency order, I know you've been very clear in your focus on land use regulation and eliminating some of those roadblocks that have come into place and delays that have been that we've witnessed in terms of developing housing. Have you seen your ability to have more flexibility in spending or in hiring practices or to de-silo within City Hall and Los Angeles regulation how services and departments can work together better under this emergency order?
That's an excellent question because it's going to take all of that. So we just started meeting on the same day that I declared the state of emergency. I met with all the general managers. We've had 2 meetings so far because really, just about every single department touches on the issue. The general public wouldn't think about the library department, for example, but it's a big issue in libraries. And so bringing everybody forward and asking them within a certain number of days for them to get back to us, to tell us what are the obstacles, what are the roadblocks, how can we help you get to yes? And so we're exploring that. And what I have found is that the minute we sent that signal, people are very willing and very open and forthcoming and coming and telling us, well, we think we can do it this way. And so it makes me very, very hopeful that we will be able to streamline a lot and that we'll be able to assist the general managers in addressing some of the roadblocks. And then one of the things I discovered along the way, I don't know if the county is suffering with this the way the city is, but we have thousands of vacancies. And how do we get people hired quickly? For example, there's several hundred vacancies in sanitation. Now, as we set to move people from encampments into motels, we need sanitation there to assist. So on the bright side, even though we have the vacancies now, the bright side is those are good paying jobs. And we have to think about this issue in the whole spectrum because the majority of people that are unhoused can get their lives together, address whatever the issues are, and join the workforce. For those that are not working, and we have a job for them.
Absolutely. You share my thinking on this subject as it relates to the county and also causes for concern or causes me to think about the possibility of us to support what you're doing in your leadership to declare our own state of emergency here in the county, to be in partnership with you, to have that loosening in regulation, to have that cooperation and partnership, and to make sure that we're addressing those very issues also on our side, to make sure that we're not sort of the roadblock to making sure that there is progress. I support this item as it's been proposed today, and I'm glad that we're talking about the inclusion of other cities as well. That's very important. There are other cities who are struggling, though I would say that not all of our cities are struggling the same. And so I want to make sure if we are acknowledging to other cities that we are open to supporting them, that we are doing so in an equitable way. And by that, I mean focusing on where our greatest need is so we can prioritize that over just sort of saying, well, every city within Los Angeles and the unincorporated areas all be treated exactly the same. We've seen how painting with a broad brush can, create duplicative services or delete resources that could be better used in other places. And in a declaration on our county side of the aisle, I hope that our chair, our council, our CEO can work together in helping the county declare our own order to create meaningful power and expediency in terms of how we can support the mayor and the city in de-siloing our own efforts, for example, in terms of spending like the MHSA funds. We know we have more than $1 billion in reserves, but due to restrictions, we've had trouble spending that funding. That funding would be an invaluable resource to help make sure that the services that the people who will be housed in Los Angeles and other cities can actually be cared for. Can we get flexibility in our hiring practices and civil service hiring rules or incentives to give student loan relief or hiring bonuses to compete with other providers? As we've seen, we've had challenges in filling vacancies in our workforce, specifically in our Department of Mental Health, and making sure that they have what they need in terms of their outreach teams. Community-based organizations are encountering similar challenges, so I'd like to explore how a declaration could address those concerns, and making sure that our Mental Health Services Act funds actually meet the people where they are and serve people that need our help the most. So exploring a declaration could give us the flexibility we need to do exactly that. I believe our board can also meet our new mayor halfway by making a decision soon on the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendation regarding leadership all over the County of Los Angeles and our homeless resources and operations. I know our homelessness initiative director is already working on this type of coordination, and I'm ready to see that oversight role held by the Homelessness Initiative. And finally, we need a plan to, as I know the city of Los Angeles just had its success with Measure ULA, we need to make sure that we continue to have a funding source for the work that Measure H has made possible to continue making sure that the services and support that meet those folks who need our help continue to be funded. We know 85,000 people have been permanently housed and more than 115,000 have been placed in some form of interim housing thanks to those funds. We need to continue that success and partner with the city of Los Angeles. And in order to do that, we need to have the resources to continue those efforts. And we need a plan for a revenue measure that will build on our success for Measure H and ensure that every person in LA County has an affordable home. So I look forward to all the ways that we can partner, exploring with my colleagues how we can also meet the moment with you and make sure that we have all of the flexibility that we need as you are seeking in your own city to deliver in the ways that you're seeking to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you very much, and let me start by thanking our Chair Hahn, and Supervisor Barger for bringing the motion forward. I am supportive of the motion, Madam Mayor, and we all know as policymakers that details make the difference. I don't say the devil's in the details anymore. Details make the difference, and so we have to figure out how we focus on that. You know, as I watched you this weekend on every channel, from Face the Nation to News Conference to Spectrum, I was immediately reminded of Sweet Honey in the Rock, the folk singers, who have a beautiful song that says, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And we are the ones we've been waiting for. And so as you've talked about your desire to lock arms, I hope you feel that desire reciprocated. We are clear we're the ones we've been waiting for, and we are clear that alignment will make the difference. I appreciate you acknowledging the need for the IMD waiver. I hope you saw me doing my applause. I know our mental health director appreciates that. As you talked about the vacancy rate in city departments, you know, our vacancy rate in our county Department of Mental Health is like 24, 25%. So we are clear that a part of our challenge in providing these critical services is man and woman power. I think these are, this is a sector that has been underinvested in. And so, you know, finding psychologists and psychiatrists and clinical social workers, people wanting to do this work, we're gonna have to kind of go deep into our academic institutions to make sure that they are continuing to produce people who are prepared and equipped to do the work. I would also add, as we talked about all the county departments, we need to make sure that we add Metro to that mix, because Metro has stood up in a meaningful way in the last several years in terms of acknowledging that our unhoused family, friends, and neighbors find solace in Metro on buses and trains. We've had a discussion here. Supervisor Hahn carried a motion when we look at the end-of-line experience. Our unhoused family, friends, and neighbors will take a bus or train to the end of the line, and then what? When the line stops running at midnight, how do we wrap those services around? So looking forward to you joining the Metro Board, because that's another agency that needs to be at the table and has stepped up in a meaningful way and brought resources to the table. And so as we talked about how it touches every department, I wanted to make sure we acknowledged and remembered Metro. You know, when we talk about alignment, our CEO toured, I believe, with the city CEO, Houston, and so she's came back talking about the Houston model. I led a Senate delegation to Utah 12 years ago and was deeply exposed and understood the value of the Utah model. And my aha experience in Utah, and it took me a couple days to kind of figure it out. I couldn't figure out what it was, but it was that every level of government was in perfect alignment. They all came together and identified the single problem they chose to solve for. And I think as the county, through Ms. Todoroff and her leadership, continues to figure out our processes, we can work with the city of LA, our other 87 cities, and I must acknowledge our unincorporated communities, because we are their local government. And so as we talk about our 88 cities, we have to acknowledge our unincorporated communities. And I appreciate the city of LA, my home city, has the majority of our unhoused, but we can't forget the unincorporated communities, because they are suffering. They have one level of local government who has to provide all of those services in terms of building and everything. So I want to make sure as we talk about the details making the difference, that we include them. That's not your problem, but that is certainly falls in our area of responsibility. Yeah. I appreciate you, Supervisor, talking about equity, because, Madam Chair, let me know at what point it's appropriate if we want to talk about amendments to the motion, because I did recognize that equity was not explicitly referenced in the motion. And
I know, I should know better by now.
and, you know, equity and anti-racism is a core priority of the board, and we can never put our guard down and expect that it will happen by default or tokenize the inclusion of the work. I was so impressed to see Orange County declaring that racism is a public health issue and crisis in recent weeks. LA County figured that out before they did, but we won't go there. And so I do have amendments when it's appropriate, Madam Chair. Just to get to Supervisor Horvath's point about making sure that we are using ARDI and using our equity tools that we have honed here at the county to make sure that that our investment is based on need per the latest homeless count, and that our resources and efforts are directed towards the communities that have higher incidence and experience. So when it's appropriate, Madam Chair, I would like to offer those amendments
Go ahead.
to the motion.
Go ahead. You've got the floor.
Thank you very much. And so there'll be a read-in. I am going to, because of the mayor's time, try to jump to it. Under Section 2, by January 31, identify departmental liaisons who will work with outreach teams in the city of LA to equitably assess and connect unsheltered individuals experiencing homelessness. Here's the new language: especially in areas experiencing high rates of homelessness. Again, I'm adding equitable to the third item where it says by February 15th, establish teams who will work directly with interim housing providers in the city of LA to equitably ensure that clients in interim housing are assessed. Jumping down to the last, we further move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Director of Homelessness Initiative to, here's the new language, utilize the anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion equity tools, ensure Homeless Initiative funded programs and services are equitably aligned to support the city state of emergency declaration. And in the last sentence, where we list all of our alphabet soups departments, DHS, DPH, DMH, to implement the above directives, and here's the new language, in an equitable manner based on need per the latest homeless count.
Madam Chair, can I ask clarification? Because I think you touched on it, Supervisor Horvath. On the second directive, where especially in areas experiencing high rates of homelessness, what criteria are you using? Because I've got some cities that would argue that if 5 new people end up on the street, that's a high rate of homelessness. So I think I'm good with this, but I think we need, the devil's going to be in the details, because I think each city has a different interpretation of high rates of homelessness within their boundaries.
As well as our unincorporated community.
Right, and unincorporated as well.
Yeah, Ms. Todorov, could you provide us some guidance on that?
Thank you very much. Yes, so we do use the homeless count, which is an important tool, but it is not the only tool. We need to look at our other data. We need to talk to our outreach teams and see what they're encountering on the street, and we need to hear from the cities where their encampments and unsheltered people are. So we consider a variety of factors in determining that.
Because I'm all in. I mean, I think it's great. I just want to make sure that some of my cities who may say, well, we can't, I mean, believe me, no one wants to compete for who has more homeless, but you know, how do we compete with the city for those resources and numbers, because our numbers are not the same. But I wholeheartedly endorse what you just brought in.
I appreciate that, and I think in addition to that, the additional layer is our RD toolbox and the mapping through our RD department that helps us identify, for the lack of a better term, hot spots as well. Because I think when you really look at hot spots, it takes into account, it's, you know, balanced with the population of a city or an unincorporated community. So glad that you're here. Thank you so much. And we are the ones we've been waiting for, all of us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. And I believe from your rousing enthusiasm of Supervisor Mitchell's amendment, and I would agree, then I believe that we have accepted your amendment. So when we vote on this item later, it will be as amended. So thank you. And before we wrap this up, I didn't know if, you know, Cherie, you were just asked to comment on the amendment, but did you just briefly want to, I mean, you're our top person in the county for our homelessness initiative, and did you want to just make it very clear how we in the county will be supporting Mayor Bass's emergency declaration?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Supervisor Hahn and Board of Supervisors and Mayor Bass. It was with great excitement that my office was there with you last Monday when you declared the emergency declaration. We have met with our service providers and we have communicated with them that with all of our county resources, we can bring to bear that we want them to also support the emergency declaration and the Inside Safe effort. We have been directing our outreach teams to work with your office, as well as been attending the daily huddles to coordinate that effort. So we are aligning our departmental resources all of those important services that you talked about to make sure that people experiencing homelessness, whether they're unsheltered or sheltered, have access to all of the mainstream county resources and benefits that they are eligible for. And this is also very much aligned with the Blue Ribbon Commission directives, as well as the strategy reassessment work in which the board approved our new framework to end homelessness, which elevated at the top of the priorities that partnership with local jurisdictions, with all of our cities, as well as aligning our resources to serve the most vulnerable, and in particular, making sure that those behavioral health services and those resources for the clients that have the most complex conditions are aligned with our outreach teams, with our sheltered settings, and with our permanent supportive housing. So we are ready to partner.
Thank you. Mayor Bass, remember when you had that meeting before the press conference, right? And I think I said, oh, we have 47 strategies in the county. I'd forgotten that it was my motion that narrowed it down to 5. So it made a good point in the meeting, but it wasn't true. So we now, thanks to my motion, we have 5 strategies. And one more thing, so the woman that really runs the county, Afizia Davenport, our CEO, this motion is embedding you in the city's EOC, and I didn't really get your permission before we did that, but I saw you there that morning before Mayor Bass held her press. You were there with the general managers, and I saw something in you that I would liken to just real hope and excitement. And so just briefly, are you okay with this?
Well, Madam Chair, I bet she is, because she refers to the city CAO as her work husband, so I'm sure they're cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Board of Supervisors. You know, I am very excited. I echo the comments that Cherie Todoroff made. And I think one important point to be noted here is I feel like this is the culmination of work that the county had started, and I feel like the city has placed a finer point on it. One was your motion to go back and say, it's now time for us to pivot and adjust. Let's look at our strategies and reimagine how we can implement them better. And I think the second piece was Supervisor Barger's motion on the Blue Ribbon Commission on homelessness and those recommendations. I feel like those two together has positioned us to partner in a meaningful way and basically double down on our commitments to combating homelessness. And we'll now do that in closer partnership with the City of Los Angeles and my work husband, Matt Szabo. Yes.
You know, the other thing, colleagues, I know several of you, I mean, we didn't call out every single of our departments in this motion, but I think you've all touched on it. And as well as the cities, all their departments, everyone touches. I did think about our public defender's office. And they have had such success sort of with their mobile van going to encampments, because a lot of those who are in encampments have several barriers to finding housing, and some of them are legal. And our public defender's office does a very good job of sort of caseworking individuals who are living on the streets and seeing whether or not they can navigate them in the legal system to actually help remove some barriers that they have had from being able to rent an apartment. So let's make sure our public defender's office is also part of this. Madam Mayor, the other thing, I didn't correct you because it really kind of sounded good when you called me Madam President. My colleagues prefer to call me the chair, but I was not going to correct you because it actually had a nice ring to it.
Yeah, well.
Madam President. But you know, the other thing, and this is it, and then if you wanted to say anything at the end, Ms. Mayor, but I was thinking how long, you know, there was a lawsuit that was filed against both the county and the city on the basis of us not working together. And we are still navigating that in court. And I thought the public has given us their trust and their money, right? They approved Measure H, which gives us about $500 million a year to address this problem. The City of LA passed HHH, which was about building affordable housing, and now the ULA. So the public is willing to put their faith in their government to begin to address this problem. And I think now is that moment. We have been working towards this, but sorry, I'm going to have to say it. It took a woman to come in here with all these other women, and we're gonna make a difference. So,
Madam Chair, can I just ask a clarification on something that,
I don't know, that was a high note. You're gonna.
well, no, this is a high note too. Supervisor Horvath and Supervisor Mitchell both touched on it. We've declared a fiscal emergency. How does that I'm a little, I thought that the county had in place an emergency order, but I'm told it's just on the fiscal side that it was declared by us a couple years ago. Can we get a report back on that?
Let's get a report back, because we also, I believe, we had a report on declaring an
Right.
emergency.
You mentioned it.
And I think there's a report floating out there, so let's bring that back and see where we are. But in the meantime, I don't think we need that to do
Right.
what we're
No.
talking about today, to support the City of LA's declaration.
Thank you, Madam President.
But, I know. Can we change the moniker out here? Okay, Ms. Mayor, did you want to just?
Yes. Well, first of all,
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is just, wonderful, and I think it's the beginning of a very, very fruitful partnership. And when we talk about countywide, I mean, just coming from being a member of Congress, I represented unincorporated areas and Culver City. And so to me, I really believe that as time goes on, we need to look for how we structure how we address the unhoused from a countywide perspective, with all 88 cities having skin in the game. And so I just wanted to highlight one problem where we need to lock arms a lot, and that's substance abuse. We talk about mental health a lot, but I remember back in the day when we had a much more robust substance abuse infrastructure. We had community-based programs, the counselors were people in recovery, and you could stay in those programs for 12 months. And now you get 30 days, and I know it can be extended to 90 days. No one can get clean and sober who have been seriously addicted for 90 days. And then we put them through a treatment program and then discharge them to their tent. Whereas before, you would go through a residential treatment program, and in the second 12 months, you would go into sober livings. You had quite a while to get your life together, and it's a federal regulation, just like the IMD, that we need to have waived. And so maybe, I know that the Board of Soups plans their annual visits to DC. That might be a nice time to lock arms and go together.
Yes, come with us.
Absolutely. And the mobile van with the public defenders, I think that would be, as we do Inside Safe, and I'm leaving from here, by the way, to go to one of the encampments to participate in the outreach so I can understand how it's done. And so we'll get back to you. Okay.
Yeah, he's saying thank you,
nice.
but that was nice. But
So-
we're trying not to yell from the audience. But
So anyway, so I would like to get back and specify the needs.
okay, good.
And I appreciate that. I know that staff is going to introduce me to some of the general managers from the health departments. One last thing, in terms of the workforce, I know DCFS maybe still has a program where you would get tuition reimbursement if you graduated and then came on to DCFS. I don't know if DMH, has a program like that, but I remember many staff members from Community Coalition taking advantage of that program.
Well, there's no shortage of great ideas coming from you. There's no shortage of energy and passion and real grit and determination, and I feel the same for the five of us. We're ready to do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership, everyone.